Abigail Adams, Champion for Women, written by Tyler Omoth. Fast facts. Full name, Abigail Smith Adams. Birth date, November 11th, 1744 in Weymouth, Massachusetts. Husband, President John Adams. Children, Abigail, John Quincy, Susanna, Charles, and Thomas. Years in the White House, 1797 to 1801. Accomplishments, served as a supporter and unofficial advisor to her husband before and during the time her husband was President of the United States, was a champion of equal education for girls, spoke out against the institution of slavery, against the wishes of her neighbors, helped a Black youth in her area get a formal education. Chapter 1, The Second First Lady. Abigail Adams sat in a dimly lit room in her home in Quincy, Massachusetts. She was wearing a basic house dress. The tan color displayed the wear and tear of daily life for a woman in 1797. She reached out her hand to take the trembling hand of the elderly woman before her. The woman was her mother-in-law, Susanna Boylston Adams Hall, and she was dying. Abigail's husband, John, was in Philadelphia while Abigail tended to his mother. He was accepting his election as the second president of the United States of America. This made Abigail the second First Lady of a brand new nation. From this day forward, she knew their lives would be changed forever. Abigail was born in 1744 in Weymouth, Massachusetts. At that time, most girls did not receive a formal education. Abigail did not attend school, but her parents still encouraged her to learn to read and write. One night, Abigail put on her favorite dress and went into town for a social event. She was 17 years old. A young man named John Adams noticed her. The two talked and connected over their mutual love of reading. 3 years later, John and Abigail were married. Abigail loved John's personality. He was a lawyer and she constantly debated with him. Soon, Abigail became John's most trusted advisor on all topics. In the 1760s, Britain ruled over the American colonies. As he worked as a lawyer, John also had worked to build the revolution against England. Now he was about to be sworn in as the president of a newly freed nation. Abigail sat holding her mother-in-law's hand in the dark. She knew that her husband would need her now more than ever. Learning is not attained by chance. It must be sought for with ardor and attended to with diligence. Abigail Adams. Chapter 2, Defender of Women's Rights. It was March 1776. Abigail sat at her desk at home. The spring sunlight shone through the window. Her young daughter played happily on the floor behind her. Abigail sharpened a quill. She dipped the tip into her pot of black ink. John was in Philadelphia with the Continental Congress. She wrote to him with some advice. I long to hear that you have declared an independency. And by the way, in the new code of laws which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power in the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. Abigail knew that she had been lucky. She lived in a time when most girls did not receive any formal education, yet her family had supported her desires to read and learn. However, as an adult, Abigail still lived in a time period when women had few rights. Abigail had no voting powers. She could not hold political office. She even had very few rights to own property. Abigail wrote more letters to her husband, and she wrote them to anyone who would read about her ideas on the education of women. Abigail believed that young boys needed to grow into responsible adults. They were to be leaders of the nation. In order for this to happen, the women who raised them needed to be educated as well. Abigail knew that women were more than caretakers. If we mean to have heroes, statesmen, and philosophers, we should have learned, educated women. Abigail Adams. Women not only raised children, but often handled their husbands' finances as well. Some women even had jobs while their husbands were away. Abigail joined forces with other early feminists, such as writer Judith Sargent Murray. These women worked to create a movement toward equal rights. Abigail wanted to create a system for the education of women. She believed in equal rights in voting and property. Abigail also wanted to see slaves freed. She believed that freedom and education were not meant for a select few. Abigail spoke out on these issues. She often tried to use John's power to create change. Chapter 3, Mrs. President. Abigail stepped off a ship and onto dry land for the first time in more than 5 weeks. It was 1784. Abigail's legs wobbled a bit as she got used to the sudden lack of motion. She wore her finest dress, which had been carefully packed away for the trip. Finally, she was in France. John had been here for a diplomatic mission. They had been apart for nearly 5 years. Throughout their marriage, John and Abigail Adams exchanged many letters. These were more than just letters of affection and news of the day. They were letters between two confidants. They trusted each other. John sought out Abigail's advice on many political matters. He valued her opinion greatly. When John was inaugurated in 1797, Abigail's status with her husband did not change. She continued to advise him on many matters. Some other officials resented her position. They began to refer to her as Mrs. President. They wanted to imply that she had made more decisions than her husband. Abigail did not always tell John what he wanted to hear, but she always gave her honest opinion. From 1798 to 1800, John had to deal with the XYZ affair. This was a disagreement with France that threatened to become a war. John wished for a peaceful resolution, but Abigail disagreed with him. She thought the United States should declare war on France. However, the countries stayed at peace. However, Abigail did not always disagree with her husband. There were many times when the two agreed. Whether Abigail agreed or disagreed with her husband, John always respected her opinion. He always wanted to know what Abigail thought about an issue. As the second First Lady, Abigail Adams proved the position could involve much more than just being the president's wife. Abigail was a powerful force in the political world in the late 1700s. Think about it. Abigail Adams believed that to be able to raise intelligent children, women needed to be better educated themselves. Do you think it is important for everyone to have the same opportunities for education? Why or why not? Abigail Adams read everything she could find when she was young. How do you think reading helps educate? While he was a diplomat and president, John Adams asked for advice from his wife. In a time when women's opinions were not considered equal to men's, why do you think John did this? In her letter to John in March 1776, Abigail said that if women were granted no power, they would eventually start a rebellion. Why do you think it was important for women to be able to vote?